Well, good afternoon. I'm Dan Fowler. I'm a city councilman for the 2nd District, which is north of the river. And we're here to discuss two ordinances that are being introduced today, 210446 and 210448. The first one, it appears, is an attempt to reduce funding or put more city control over the police department. I want you all to know I learned about these for the first time between about 11:45 and noon today. Granted, I was out of town last week, but my cell phones were with me the whole time. And to say that I'm concerned about them is a gross understatement. The result of these ordinances to reduce police general funding by about $42 million and move it into another account that the city would control. My fear is that this will result in a severe reduction in police staffing. Right now, my opinion is we need more staffing and not less. Right now, the police department has difficulty solving crimes and closing cases, largely because of lack of staffing. We saw the effect of what happens when you get more last summer when Operation Legend was in effect. During the time that we had assistance from the federal government, they were not patrolling, but they were helping behind the scenes. We saw a reduction in crime and an increase in the number of closed cases. To me, this is beneficial. I'm also concerned as a Northlander, at any given time, we may have 2 or 3 patrol officers in the entire Northland. That's half of the city's landmass. This severely compromises the ability of KCPD to respond in a timely and effective manner to calls for service. If this results in a reduction of police staff, and I'm certain that it will, this will further compromise that ability because more people will be dispatched south of the river. And if you take a quick look at where they're funding, one of the first line items is a reduction in the Office of Community Complaints by, according to this, about $7 million. I was thinking that we needed to increase the funding of Office of Community Complaints and rearrange it to make it more robust and more effective. Now I make something clear. What is happening here, I believe, is an overreaction to a problem or a perceived problem. I support change. We all do. I support working collaboratively to come up with creative solutions to solve complex issues, and these are complex issues. I don't support change without a plan, and that's what is happening here. Our city has experienced an alarming increase in homicides over the last year, and sadly, it looks like that's going to be continuing. But this is not the way to reduce the number of homicides or the amount of violent crime. Now is the time when we need to come together and work in a transparent manner, not with stuff going on behind the scenes. We need to bring about a safer Kansas City, but we can't do that arbitrarily by picking and choosing who gets funding. So thank you. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Councilman Kevin O'Neill.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Neill, 1st District at Large, City Council. It comes at an interesting time. Last week, the legislature voted to take away residency requirements for our police officers, and that upset me. In fact, I tweeted out, this makes me change how I look at local control now, because before I felt like, I could go either way on it, and I think most people have indefinite views on that. But this told me that the state has too much control. Well, now I feel like we're kicking back and that we're going to hurt the police department over, getting back at somebody, at the state. I represent an area that has 40% of the population or more. We're coming up with a redistricting, and that's going to create even more percentage of the population north of the river. And we now have 10 to 15% of the police force in our backyard, and there has to be, you cannot take away $47 million out of a budget and expect the city to police like we're supposed to police. So that's my major concern right there. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Heather Hall, who's also in the 1st District.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. This is such a interesting turn of events. We did not expect this. And what we have always touted, and so many of my colleagues, the mayor and a lot of us, when we campaign, we say, oh, so much accountability and transparency. Well, it's not transparent to tell us 20 minutes before you're going into a meeting that we're changing all these ordinances. 2 of them, in fact, 210466 and 468 are two brand-new ordinances that my colleagues up here and I have yet to see. We were not emailed them. They were not given to us for review. We, as a council body, always do that. We share with our colleagues when we're going to introduce legislation to get buy-in, to get together and to communicate and to have consensus. But unfortunately, our colleagues and the mayor who are supporting this did not give us that luxury of affording us this sharing of this information. That's disappointing to us, because if this is such a great opportunity, then there should have been transparency, there should have been a shared offer information so we all would have known what was happening, but we didn't. And I would say that while it feels very punitive in nature that they're trying to do this because they're upset about something else, the irony of this is by cutting $46 million of the budget or bringing it down to the 20% funding level, it seems very counterintuitive, because they say they don't want the residency. Well, it's really irrelevant. There won't be any new cops to hire now because of this enormous budget cut. You're not going to have any more policemen anyway to worry about where they live. So I find that very ironic. And then also I would just say, this does not hurt Heather Hall, Teresa, Dan, Kevin. It doesn't hurt us. It hurts the people that we represent. This hurts the citizens of Kansas City when there are no police officers to protect them. Because by and large, whether you're in any district in Kansas City, you want the police to come when you call. This is about protecting the people who are most vulnerable, who need the help when they need it, and they want the police to come when they call. And I don't understand how they believe a $46 million reduction in the budget will allow for increased opportunities for the police to show up. It won't allow for increased opportunities for the police to come and work with them in their communities with the community policing programs. There are a myriad of things that are going to be cut because of this. And I would just say the irony of all this is the things that are getting cut are happening in the 3rd and the 5th district by and large. They're going to cut Metro Patrol by $8.2 million. They're cutting Central Patrol $9.7 million. East Patrol Division $4 million. The Crime Lab, $700,000, almost $800,000. These are things that inherently help the urban center of our city. And I don't understand why we would hurt the people in the most vulnerable districts in our city. And so I would just implore you to say, if you're talking to your council person, say to them, how does this help? How does this help my constituents so I can be a better representative? Because remember, we work for you. It's not the other way around. We work for the citizens of the city, and we need to help protect them and keep they and their families safe. So I'm very disappointed. I'm very discouraged by this. I think this is only going to hurt, not help. And I will pass it on to my colleague, Councilwoman Teresa Lohr, to finish up. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Heather. I'm Teresa Lohr. I'm the 2nd District at-large councilwoman. This is my 14th year at City Hall being on the City Council. I did take a break. I was here from 95 to 03 and then back again this time. So this is absolutely the worst piece of legislation I've seen since I've been here at City Hall. I learned about this at 11:33 this morning, so I had no indication this was happening. Obviously, there was a little cabal that did, because they're sponsoring this, they're co-sponsoring this legislation, but the 4 Northlanders were completely left out. So that makes me wonder how local control would work. If in fact we did have local control, is it just certain people that get to control, or is it the entire body that is a part of this? But I want to speak from the heart today. You take $46 million out of the police budget, and who gets hurt the most is our families, our children. How do they stay safe and secure if there are no police around? That's east side, west side, north, south, all of these families and all of our citizens deserve safety and security. I was behind a wreck on I-35 the other day, and I stopped because the wreck was right in front of me. It was a very busy day on the freeway. It took 17 minutes for a police officer to come, and the 2 people in front of me were hurt. The ambulance got there quickly, but the police, they didn't have anybody to send. So think about that. When you have to call the police and the response time is 30 minutes to an hour and somebody's breaking in your house, or somebody's holding a knife to you, and you can't, and nobody's coming, because there's nobody there to come. I live in the Northland. We have 51% of the land mass in this city, and 40% of the population. At any given time, we maybe have 3 or 4 officers up there on patrol. That's how sad this situation is. Our safest time in this city was in the mid-90s, when we had the most police officers employed. And since then, it has just gone downhill. The less patrol you have out there, the more unsafe it's going to get. So think about our kids and families. If you have concerns about this, please call the mayor, please call the 8 sponsors, and call the governor. The state is in control of the police department. Let him know how you feel. Thank you.
I have one last question, or one last thing to ask you. We were talking amongst us, and the 4 of us had a question that we don't have an answer to, and we'd like you to help us solve it. That is, if $46 million is coming out of the police budget and going into the general fund, where is it going to go? How are we going to spend it instead? Thank you.
Well, the council person, there's a plain, if you read the ordinances, the plain language of the 2 ordinances when you take them together is, there's one that reduces by about $44 million, correct? And that's, I think you guys have referenced that, it reduces the police budget in the current fiscal year. There's a separate ordinance that talks about negotiating in a contract with the police, the Board of Police Commissioners, not anybody else, how to reallocate those $44 million for policing purposes. And so you guys have stood up here and said that it's a budget cut, but it feels like, aren't you guys kind of ignoring that other part of the ordinance that talks about reallocating those funds for policing purposes?
Well, you want to speak first? I'll hand it to Tim. Go ahead.
If this money goes into the general fund, we have no assurance that this will go back to the police department. It could go anywhere.
Does it say in the, I don't think it says in those ordinances that it goes to the general fund.
Yes, it
goes
Yes,
to-
yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Where?
And I would just also just be very clear, the money has to be requested. So it could go to any organization that was asking for that 40-some million dollars. Anyone that thinks they're doing community service programming or supporting, helping public safety in the city, they can ask for that money as well, not just KCPD.
Councilperson, does it seem like somebody's trying to pull a fast one?
Well, when I don't hear about something until 11:45, when she calls and says, by the way, Thursdays are our busy day. As you all know, we are in council meetings all day Thursdays. I started my meetings on Zoom this morning at 7 o'clock, and I did not see social media until she called me and said, hey, did you hear what just happened? No, I didn't. I have worked with the mayor for 6 years. There is absolutely zero reason. And the funny thing is, I actually texted him this morning about something else, which he responded to me about something else. So I don't understand why he couldn't have said, oh, and by the way, I'm doing these 2 ordinances that really affect something that you hold dear, which is public safety for our people. So yes, I believe there is something a little sinister going on. Somebody else had a question.
There's 9 co-sponsors on this. Do you know what it takes to get something through? Is this just, do you even have a prayer at stopping this? I guess is my question.
No.
Yes, we always have a prayer. That may just be that.
He's Catholic.
He's Catholic.
Yeah, I don't know whether we do or not. I don't know if given the attitude and the approach of some of our colleagues, my Northland friends up here, whether others will want to, hey, stop, I would hope they would say, let's stop, let's rethink this, let's talk to everybody and get buy-in. I would hope that would happen. I don't know whether it will or not.
Talk about the prevention aspect of this. Clearly, these council members want to fund the police through prevention, according to what the legislation is, according to what they're saying. They want the $44 million to be spent specifically on prevention. What is your thought on that? They say that with Operation Legend, crime kept going up, the violent crime, the homicides. They want to get on the back end of this with prevention.
Well, actually, with Operation Legend, crime and all that went down. That is our intent, but there's nothing in here that requires that to happen. All of a sudden, the police are cut back on their, I don't want to say guaranteed funding, but their money that they can count on to use for their programs, and that's why I think it's going to result in a reduction in staff. But it could go, as Heather pointed out, it could go anywhere. And we don't know where that anywhere is. We don't know if it's going to go into something that's totally unrelated to policing because somebody says, well, it might reduce crime or not. We don't know that, and there's no guarantee in here that it would go to policing.
How will these ordinances action within these pieces of legislation that you would be willing to discuss or compromise on?
You know, it's hit us, kind of blindsided us pretty good. So is there something, I don't know, maybe. I never put aside negotiation or compromise in any scenario. But how would it affect urban core neighborhood? I cannot help but think that would be damaging to urban core neighborhoods, because there are only so many police officers right now to be dispatched to incidences wherever they may be in Kansas City. So we reduce that, well, there's a reduction in the number of police officers can be dispatched. So I can't help but think it would be anything but detrimental.
How can you say that crime went down under Operation Legend? The city had a record number of homicides last year.
During the period that Operation Legend was in effect, which is really only a couple, 3 months, there was a reduction in violent crime.
Do you have a counter proposal? It sounds like everybody's trying to bring on the same types of things. The social justice group that wrote the letter to the mayor, and it seems like this might be in response to that, they want to see more prevention. What's your idea for prevention?
You know, if we are brought in early in the process, we can work through those kinds of issues. We were not brought in early in the process, so we did not have that opportunity. So that's my response to that right now. Is there a possibility? Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what somebody else wants to do or say, or at least be more specific in how you're going to spend this money, which this is not.
Do you think that the police department has any accountability on their part, given that they give the most resources out of the general fund of any department? Crime continues to be a problem. I mean, do any of you believe either way that leadership in the police department needs to be held accountable, or that the city council needs to exert more control over the decisions that they make?
Go ahead, Hilliard.
Well, I think that our Chief Rick Smith, has more integrity than I've ever seen in a long time in an organization. The kinds of battles that he has had to fight over the last year and a half have been extraordinary. And, you know, it's easy for all of us to judge because we're sitting here with not bulletproof vests on, and we're sitting here not understanding how it is to be a police officer, yet we're telling them how to do their job and do it better than they do it. And I find it's so ironic. No one ever says, could you just do that camera a little bit better, because I know better how to do it than you do. Really? Because I'm not a reporter, I'm not a camera person, but I do know what I know. And I think what we haven't done is we have not given the police department the opportunity to explain how they do what they do, but we also expect them to be some sort of a superhero that can just fix all the violent crime. Like they're going to knock on your door and say, don't kill anybody today, I'll be right here waiting until you do. I mean, I don't know what our expectation is. We keep saying we want them to be this, we want them to be that, but yet we're not holding ourselves to that same level of accountability in our own professions. So I think we need to be really smart about what our expectations are. And we keep saying, help reduce violent crime. Well, how about if people just stop killing each other? Because the truth is, the police are not the ones that are doing all the violence. They are having to respond. They cannot respond within 319 square miles in an efficient amount of time with the staffing that they have right now. That's a problem. This is not because they're bad people or they're not well run. It's because of a sheer magnitude of A, geography, and B, their numbers of people that are in their in the profession that are doing the job. So that's not a problem, but the problem will get worse when we have less officers on the street because they can't even get where they need to get anyway. So I would ask any of you who are journalists, who I know you guys are running from story to story all the time, how do you get from Martin City up to Platte City in time for a story that's urgent? How do you get there? Because it takes a long time, and we are expecting them to be superhuman, and then we forget that the fact that they're still all regular people like we are too. And I am sorry, I'm tired of Monday morning quarterbacks for every other profession, for this profession, except for every other profession. And that's irritating to me that we keep saying, oh, they should do X, Y, and Z. Okay, you know what I'd ask you to do? Go volunteer, raise your hand, reach out to the police academy and ask them if you can do the virtual training. And you go try and see if you know how to be a police officer with doing the video of a instantaneous reaction, coming onto a scene, figuring out how to react, and then you tell me if it's really that simple of a job, and then you go sign up to do it, because that's the truth of the matter. Is all of us act like we know so much better, but yet we don't. And so I think it's time for us to say, you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. But if we would have had the opportunity to work together on these ordinances to make things better, to work in a positive way, sure, there's things in every industry we could tweak and make better. That's not something that I don't believe the police department's saying no to. We're definitely not saying no to it. We'd be happy to help negotiate in budget terms. But again, we didn't even know about this. And then they kind of threw us a bone by saying, oh, we'll add $3 million in for the police academy that we keep asking for. But the irony of that is, they give us $3 million for 50-person academy in June, who we cannot staff. So those people are all going to be police officers well-trained in Belton and Raytown and Grandview or whoever else, because we won't have the money to fund more police officers. So isn't that ironic? So they're offering something that really doesn't matter to make us feel better? I don't understand that. So that's my answer to your question.
Why do you think they left the Northland out?
You would have to ask them, but it's a very good question. Why were we not consulted up front? Yes.
Do you feel like this will have a fight in the legislature if passed? I talked to Senator Blumenauer, who thinks that, if this passes, there will be a fight in the legislature to constrain the budget again, or them control the budget more.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I just want to say one thing, and I guess my disappointment in this is, I grew up south of the river, actually, so did Heather. We both now live north of the river, and both of us agree that there's a real hole between the river north and the river south. And this is just one more thing that's separating us. And that's what I really think that our main goal should be working together so that that the river doesn't really exist. But it seems like every year I've been on this council, and I've only been on it 2, but every year it just seems to divide further and further, and that's disappointing to me, because I think this is a great city, and I think that the people here deserve the very best protection, and that's all. And I think by cutting this, we are entering a phase where, where we have to the police department has to justify for that extra money. I don't really have a problem with that. I do have a problem with every year it becomes more political, and that's where, you can say what you want, whether you want, some people believe in defunding the police, some people don't. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to be, it's kind of like everybody, any place but my place, cut the cops, but not my neighborhood. And that's kind of where we are right now, because they are going to be cut.
Do any of you believe that the Missouri legislature as a whole needs to get involved here? Because there are talks of that happening.
My guess is they will.
But do you want it to happen?
Well, it depends on what happens with the police department and how they respond to this. It's a state-run agency. And, we didn't have Minneapolis or Ferguson or Seattle. We didn't have any of that because we have a very professional police department. So, the minor incidences that happen in this city are negligible compared to other cities, and they all have local control. So I'm not sure where we go from here, but I know this is a huge blow to the police department and their morale and how they're going to react. So I just don't know.
Are you for in favor of the status quo control of the police department by the Board of Police Commissioners? Are all 4 of you in favor of that?
I'm in complete control of the state running the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department until such a time would exist that we would have our act together.
I am not.
We've talked about
Dan
prevention,
Fowler,
we've talked about,
are you in support of state control of the police department?
As of this moment, yes, I am. I think there comes a time when it will be local control, but I think things have to stabilize a lot more than they are right now. Yes.
we've talked about prevention, we've talked about policing, we haven't talked about prosecuting. How much of that do you think is at play? Does there need to be more prosecution of criminals to prevent those homicides? That's one thing we haven't talked about.
You get that one.
Let the prosecutor.
I'm not a prosecutor, I am a lawyer. Yeah, I think prosecution is a very important part of law enforcement in general. I live in Platte County, and I represent portions of Clay County, and prosecution up there is much robust, I think, than you see in Jackson County. Granted, they don't have as much crime as in Jackson County, so maybe that makes a difference. But yeah, I think prosecution has to be a follow-up. There has to be consequences for crime. Certainly, I'm totally opposed to anyone getting convicted for something they didn't do, but if they did the crime, then it needs to be handled quickly and in a judicial manner.
In your view, do you think KCPD has had problems with transparency with its budget? The mayor seems to have a growing frustration with how money is spent. What's your view on that?
Well, the mayor sits on the Board of Police Commissioners, and so he has access to all the information that he really wants. I don't. I mean, we have a weekly KCPD report these days at our business session, and we are free to ask any questions we want there. The police department is audited just like everybody else is on their budget to make sure they're spending it correctly and appropriately, and we oversee that. We do see those numbers when they come through. I remember my first term, money was not spent the way we wanted it to be spent by a prior administration, and we certainly had very severe issues about it, but we did know about it, and we do have that kind of ability to get that kind of information now if we wish it.
As you know, there's been calls for Chief Smith to resign of some sort. Do you feel like maybe this is a play from Mayor Lucas to maybe push his hand out the door in some kind of a way?
I don't speculate on what anybody else's mind. I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Councilperson Hall, my question earlier when I asked if somebody was trying to pull a fast one, you said, you used the word sinister. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, my understanding of putting in legislation at the 11th hour is always a little bit speculative. I want to know why someone would want to shove an ordinance in really quick. I can't even tell you how many times on the floor at 3 o'clock, one of my colleagues has said, gosh, we just got this and we're trying to read it really quick. We don't like floor introductions for same-day adoption. Nobody likes that. And here, if nobody likes it, why is everybody doing it today? That seems very strange.
Today's not for same-day adoption, this is my understanding. It's going to be referred to.
Well, but it's not only for same day, it might not be for same day, but it's an introduction today on the floor that we haven't seen yet. So we have no time to read it.